I've been always very, very fascinated by film. I have studied law myself, intellectual property, but then I did my master's degree in producing film and TV. And to cut it short, I've been working between UK and Georgia, but even when living in UK, I always had a contact with my colleagues in film in Georgia, because I always thought if you would analyze the Georgian history, film was always very high on the cultural agenda. And if I compare it to the history of Georgian fashion, for instance, of course, the Georgian films been very, very resonated also in Soviet times, and it was also a way for Georgians to explain things that have been prohibited for many reasons. So, to cut a long story short, I was having a nice life in London, working in a consultancy called Bob Consulting, where I was a consultant for the cultural sector and creative economy. And this is where I've learned also a little bit how things been organized in Europe as such, but also what the UK and Anglo-Saxon model of cultural organization has been. And I got a call from the Minister of Culture of Georgia back then. And I don't want to bore you with a lot of details. Of course, there have been things preceding to it. But basically, I got a call and the voicemail said, Tamara, I really need you to call me back. I have something very serious to talk about. And in 3 to 6 months from that call onwards, what happened is that I came back from London to Tbilisi, and I took over the management of Georgian National Film Center. It was a very clear indication from the state, let's say, that I would have a full freedom in making reforms, and the only thing the Georgian government wanted to achieve was to make Georgian film visible and to make it internationally recognizable. And they said, no interference, we support you as we can with the policies, but you are really in charge and you need to achieve it. And I had a 3 years mandate to actually do it. I started to really actually quite actively reorganizing the film fund and understanding that no one would give me €2 billion. So either I had to work with what I had and prove that we need more money as well for the support, or my work would go into vain. It's very important to have a body responsible for the film promotion and production strategies, because this is how Europe is organized. This is how historically the Europeans took a decision that to preserve the national identity and the cultural diversity in every country, like CNC in France, like a Norwegian Film Institute in Norway, you have an independent body supported by the state, meaning financially, that is responsible for nurturing local cinema. And that was the ambition I had. That was what the Georgian Film Fund had to become. And I think we did it. So we did it, and I said, okay, what are we doing now? First, what we are doing is like understanding what sort of an internal structure we have. So of course I had to do a lot of internal reorganizations. And finally, I said, I cannot do everything. There are people that want to do everything, but I can't do it in this organization. So I have decided to support and to make the departments of the Film Fund work under the following main issues and tasks. So financial support for the Georgian films, which would be something that Azerbaijan would also probably need to do on a very structural level. Then supporting film education, because what I realized, there's been a big gap. And even if many years before, Georgian Film School was praised, sorry to say, but it was not up to date anymore. And why I'm saying it, because a lot of the great young filmmakers actually emigrated and went to different schools, be it FEMIS, be it in Tish, you know, be it Europe, America, whatever you like. And what does it mean for the manager? For the manager means that for many people, like probably we have on Zoom right now, young filmmakers, they've been looking for the opportunity to leave and to get a better education somewhere else. And I thought, well, if I want to build up a young Georgian talent, I need these people back. Then we said we need to a little bit understand what's happening with the festivals in Georgia. You know, do we have festivals? Are they working? Okay, maybe we have it, but do they really have any vision, any strategy? What sort of guests are coming? Can we do some synergies with this festival? So we've been mapping this and looking into the support mechanisms. And a big bit, and I know that you are interested in that as a debut studio, is the Interact, is the supporting the export internationally. So in export internationally, it means placing Azerbaijani filmmakers in international festivals, but it also means promoting and lobbying them into the international programs, such as educational, such as co-production markets, because this really makes how the big puzzle come together. And I must say, even though Georgian case is taken as a big sort of a success case in Caucasus, I must say that this work needs a careful work, because in the first stage you get a lot of attention from the scouts and festivals and market representatives, because, you know, let's be honest, these people like to travel, they like to be hosted, you know, taken from one event to another. But on the other hand, what is really important for the local fund to know, or the local managers to know, is what are they doing for you? Is that the right place for your Azerbaijani film? You might be in Cannes in the main competition in a wrong moment, because it can be that next to you, you have Leo Carax premiering his next film, and your moment in Cannes, from promotion and a strategy vision point, is finished in 30 minutes, because all trades, all critics, everyone is going to see the big French premiere, put it that way. But you can be in Sarajevo, in a very important regional film festival in Balkan, where a lot of international film professionals are coming, and you can create a buzz around your film for 3 days. And the last but not the least, in the film fund reorganization, which could also be on a long run important for Azerbaijan, is organizing the film commission department. And what film commission department essentially means is actually promoting your lands as a shooting location. And I think that and I know that there have been cases in Azerbaijan of shooting big international films. There have been different projects. I think they've been one-off. This is my personal opinion, because they've been linked probably to specific producers, to specific projects. But I don't yet know if you have a clear structure that works on promoting Azerbaijan as a location. And I don't really think, this is my personal opinion, that this is something that Azerbaijan needs to jump immediately, because I think Azerbaijan needs to first identify the talent, not scarcely, but like really as a wave, as an envelope of filmmakers and the talent that is available, and then start promoting them, building them. And when the good interest of international professionals is there for your talent, then you start investing in economic incentives like a film commission, because no one will come to Azerbaijan on a regular basis for international productions, especially in after COVID context, if you don't show them great talent that you have. It's time for Azerbaijan to make its voice heard. And the way to do it is to map and mobilize young talent. Sometimes the films you guys are doing or planning to do are much better ambassadors for the country than any diplomatic mission that goes from one country to another. Let me tell you that films, and there are numerous studies, and if you want, we can of course later on share that, show that films travel much more effectively than talks. films, even with a very complicated subject matters that are biased, that are sometimes heavy to watch, are better promoters for the culture, and sometimes they explain unexplainable. So if you have a political issue, and all of our countries have political issues, it's much better to talk in the language of a culture than to talk only in the language of formality. And this is exactly what we did in Georgia somehow. We started calling for production supports for first and second features. And my strategy was that, look, there will be people in these calls that are not known. You know, they are not those established names. We really need to make a risk investment, which is fine for the cultural support, in financial support. And we need to get into young talent and see what are these people talk. Where is the fresh breath? What are the fresh stories in Georgia? I identified filmmakers like Nana Ektimishvili, for instance, who's done a film, maybe some of your attendees now know, In Bloom and My Happy Family, that brought Georgia back to Berlinale after 12 years of full stagnation. We've supported the documentary called Machine That Makes Everything Disappear, which went to Sundance and was awarded for the best directorship in the documentary section, which was, I even don't remember when, before the Georgian film made it to Sundance. We had a film like Tangerines. Of course, Tangerines was not a film that was a debut at all, because the director Zaza Urushadze has been an acclaimed filmmaker, but representing a little bit the war generation of Georgian filmmakers, that many of them lost the skill of filmmaking somehow. But he did a film that brought us Golden Globe nomination, Oscar Foreign Language nomination. And, you know, if I tell you now very openly, because I'm not a film policy person in Georgia anymore, this costed me an equivalent of 200,000 euro. And in response, I got the best visibility for Georgia in Europe. We reached out to Golden Globe Marketing and the foreign nomination for the Oscar. And normally a country would invest a couple of millions only in the marketing campaign of such a move. Tangerine as a movie was a cooperation between Estonia, official co-production between Estonia and Georgia. And what it also meant that both me as the representative of the Georgian Films Fund, but also my colleagues in Estonia, we had like joint drive to promote that film. Also, strategically, Estonians invested much more in that film because Estonia can afford it and Georgia could not. But for me, it was fantastic. Georgian story, Georgian director, main Georgian talent, everything really backed up by the Baltic fuel. We made it up until the very end. But not many people know what a tough call it was to make that film, because on the day before the principal photography should have been started, I got a call from the director and he said, my Estonian partner pulled out. So the Tangerines were already we joke always saying we're already on the trees, and the camera was ready to roll, and basically they entered a major financial problem. And now look at my perspective as a state perspective. I had two choices. Either I had to call off the project and say, you know, we audit it, we close it, and this film's never gonna happen again. Or I could take a more proactive approach. I really started to proactively look for the help for this project. And we found an Estonian producer, Ivo Feld, who now is almost, you know, we joke that he's Georgian and Zaza, sadly, is not alive anymore, the director of Tangerines, but you know, he's been also having the honorary citizenship in Estonia as a cultural move. Basically, we saved the project. we said, okay, we're not losing it. We're not only acting as bureaucrats that need to follow the strict regulation. I'm not saying that we had to go out of any rule, but we found a way of getting the new player. Ivo clicked immediately from All Film in Estonia, very known international producer. Yep. And the film started to happen again. And that's what I'm saying. That's why you need a film structure in a country, because the film people understand better what's going on. And if you only deal with other administrative professions, sometimes they might not understand the specificity of the film production. When you do co-productions, it's also very important to know that it's not only financing. So let's say the film In Bloom's been financed out of France, Germany, and Georgia. But what you can also do, and I know that Azerbaijan's been a little bit walking around this opportunity here and there, is there are pan-European options of funding. And one of these very important financiers is Eurimage. Eurimage is a fund of Council of Europe that supports cinema from cultural and economic perspectives. It's very important for, I always call it like strategic value added, because those films that get funding from Eurimage have a bit of a quality label as well. You know, those festival scouts, those that are working for different platforms say, ah, there's the logo of Eurimage there. So, you know, this project really was read by many people, was green-lighted by many international film professionals, and it gives you better visibility. Being international means that the demands are going higher and the expectations are going higher as well. So there should never be a moment, if you work in promotion and if you use film as a promotional tactic, to think, oh, we've done it. Now we have 6 young filmmakers, we put them together, we bring them to, I don't know, we bring them to France and we do a little retrospective and we're done and everything is okay. No, actually, this is when the real job for the film promotion starts. What is very important, and what we've done, and I've done that in Georgia as well, is to actually ensure that more young talent from Azerbaijan is part of various international networks. And this is best done when you expose them very well to international producers, but you need to know who are the producers that actually want to work in those countries. And if you put them into programs like EAVE, for instance, which is a very well-known and one of the oldest network for the development of the project. Work of the strategist, and it's the work of the film fund normally, and this is what we did in Georgia, to do those partnerships and to back up your talent a little bit to move them into those international cycles. Because that is exactly when if I go to that to those trainings or the markets as a producer, for instance, I say, that's the Georgia I'm interested in, and there is Azerbaijan, and what do I do? And that is very important. And I probably could mention a name of Guillaume Desay, who is also your producer, but also knows about Azerbaijan and Georgia, and his business model in Arizona is very interesting. He does minority co-productions out from Europe, and Guillaume is a good prototype. He certainly is not the only one, but he's a very good prototype of the person that you need to ensure knows more about Azerbaijan, because big production companies that produce big French or big Danish names, they are not your target. They are not my target in Georgia, because they do not go out from their territory or from the Scandinavian region, just as an example. But those ones like Guillaume, like Complete and Film, like All Film, you know, there are many. Those are the targets Azerbaijan should have to introduce to your talent. And when you introduce your talent, you should be also very pragmatic, and you should really know that these people need to actually be communicating in English in some way. You know, you have to have very good project presentations, because those producers have to choose between many projects available, and you need to pitch very well. And to do all that, That's why you need your talent to be trained. And to train your talent, you need to either have mechanisms to send them as much as possible to various international training platforms, or what I did, and take it as a tip. I did special partnerships for during 2 or 3 years, I think, I don't remember now, 2 for sure. I was doing special training courses like EAVE on demand, for instance, that was happening in Georgia. And I was, in a way, in control of who were the people taking part. The international experts were coming, really working, and there's been only focus on Georgian stories. Luckily, vast majority of the projects really made it international films. And that helped me to prove to the government that it's not a lost money that we put on training, but this is the money how you nurture your talent. You make it competitive, you make filmmakers competitive, and then you boost it. Because you cannot think about promotion when you don't have a balloon that you need to promote. You can have a sudden breakout of a great film, and then not many things happen afterwards. And that's not an achievement. I mean, it's an achievement for that filmmaker, but it's not an achievement for the industry as such. But when you have a steady development, which means that, you know, there's an organization, there's a fund or center or someone like state thinking how to make it steady, that is really very important, because then is when you get the international shift. You don't need to pay them to all those trade press. They are coming back to you because they want to know. And I think, and this is my personal viewpoint, Azerbaijan's been doing a lot to make itself international with all these song contests that you've been hosting and some other things as well. But I really feel that there has not yet come the moment to do the spotlight on film as such. It's very important that there is an organization. I don't really care how it's called. Normally in Europe and even in Anglo-Saxon context, it's called like a film center or film institute or a film fund that takes care of the policy. And the policy needs to cover production. That's where you make films, promotion, distribution, but it has to be also a guarantor of equality. If you are not making an international strategy, it's very difficult to make your films internationally visible. And then it means that you produce your national films for your national market. And if this is an ambition that a country has, then I totally understand. And if, like, openly speaking, you don't even need to worry about international that. But if you want your films to travel, if you are making a film that needs to be watched by different audiences, and you want to know what other audiences think about your film, then you need international strategies. Then you need to be part of all the platforms. Then you need to go to be part of Eurimage. Then you need to have bilateral treaties for cooperation. You have a lot on the cultural sector of a cultural offer, but I think what country needs to look into is how to make it consolidated, packaged, and then in a clever way promoted into different streams from co-producing perspective and from international promotion perspective. Now, a provocative question I would like to ask, and it's not to be answered, but it's for you, the Azerbaijani film industry, to debate about it, is if Azerbaijan is ready for the Eurimage membership right now. And what does it mean? Do you have enough projects that are structured as European co-production that would benefit from additional financial and strategic support? And why I flag it out to all of you that are here, the participants, because Eurimage only funds official co-productions and it's a completion financier. So it comes in the end. The project has to be over 50% financed already to be eligible for the Eurimage. On a Georgian case, I always joke, we had a very, very good rate of funding Georgian projects, but I said why? because Georgia struggled so many years to become the member of the Eurimash, that by the time I negotiated it, the structures, as I explained to you about co-productions, talent promotion, there was already in place, and there have been projects waiting for the application. We, in our part of the world, or in Baltic, or wherever, we always look with a bit of a jealousy to Scandinavia, like Denmark, Norway, and those countries. And we say, wow, what projects come out of those countries and how well placed they are in international festivals. Well, do we know why? Because they have a great regional cooperation strategies, and they don't necessarily need, of course they co-produce outside as well, but they don't necessarily need it. With all these big names, starting from Lars von Trier, you finish with Winterberg if you like, they do local. And why? Because I click very well with you. We share common history. We can understand some things that maybe a Norwegian colleague cannot immediately understand. When I come to Baku, I'm not going to ask you some silly question, not silly, but some strange things, because I will feel the situation. I'm your neighbor. We've shared the past. I know how things are organized. And someone from Iceland could take a bit more time to understand. Like probably I would be a bit more I don't know, let's say a bit more cautious with things if I go now to Latin America and I have to do a project there. In my view, I've been doing some research on this. I think we have a little bit of an issue of a small country issues, and we all want to do business with bigger players. And sometimes we make a major mistake that we don't do a project between Azerbaijan and Georgia, a co-production, small one, doesn't have to be billions, and promote it together. Because Georgia wants to do it with, I don't know, let's say Norway. And Azerbaijan wants to do it with France. I'm not saying that it has to be either or, but what I'm saying is that we're losing a lot not to be doing more together. And there are mechanisms that exist. It can be bilateral fund between Azerbaijan and Georgia for co-development. Can give something like 2,000 to 10,000 euro per project for filmmakers to develop projects together. You're not losing millions on that. And maybe you take 10 project treatments, and if 2 or 3 even work out of it into a good film, from my experience, I have a feeling that it would be already a very good start.
For some reason, we think that getting to like the top, let's put it this way, is like just like this one big leap, Whereas I think what you're saying, and I think that's also something that has been, that I've been like reflecting upon, is that like, it's like a more grassroots thing. Like you build regional and then you make a buzz there, and that's how you grow. It's like more organic, in a more natural way.
I agree. It has to be grassroots. I also say that I feel that Georgia is losing a lot because, of course, we have festivals, but none of those festivals are actually as strong as a festival in Georgia could be. So take it as a constructive criticism, really. I am not sure if Azerbaijan has a strong festival actually that could make, that could be a spot for international people to arrive, which means you need to do it. You meaning like, there has to be a strong festival organized in Azerbaijan as well, in cooperation with people who are good-willing for you, who really will not only come to make a momentum, but who are there to really nurture the talent.
One of the biggest feedbacks that keeps on popping up whenever I talk, for example, to the government representatives is they don't quite understand the reason of like, well, why should I be like, why should I be paying for something that and what am I gonna get in return? Like to put it bluntly, obviously, like that's the biggest like concern. One of the biggest is that okay, well, I'm paying for my membership, and like at best, a project from Azerbaijan is gonna get funding every 2 years at best.
Well, the funding for Georgia from Azerbaijani project will be once 3 years if you don't do anything nationally to make more projects available. So that's actually very pragmatic. That's why I'm saying that a country needs to be ready for the membership of Eurimage. And let me also tell you, I mean, it's never going to be the case. It's not only about Georgia and Azerbaijan, but many other countries that are smaller territories that you have a project like 10 times a year. Because it's a complicated, co-production is a complicated structure. It takes time.
Yeah.
Georgia was taken as a country, let's say, that had a good statistics in small territories, which means 3-4 projects per year were successful. And what does it mean? I can tell you out of my head, the membership to Eurimage costed something like not more than 150,000 euro per year to the state. And we were getting over 250,000 euro annually into Georgian projects. So I think if you look at it from the accounting perspective, that's more than, we're even for the state. Now, there is a question also from your colleague about if you need to pay it back. Yes, Eurimage money, you need to pay it back because it's not a soft subsidy, it's a loan, but it's a soft loan. Definitions are legal, as I said, so we cannot do a lot of it today. But what essentially a soft loan means, if the film break evens, then you pay it. If it does not, then you don't pay it. So if you have a great sales, if you have numerous territories sold, there's a lot of money pouring into the account of the film in the sales, then you need to pay, like you need to pay to many others, like your sales agent and so on. But if you are not doing it, and we know, where no one is a dreamer here, that mostly films go into festival circuit because festival distribution is becoming something very important for smaller art house films, then in that case, there are films that are not paying. Audience is a problem. Let's start it. And audience is a problem in the year we are now because of the major disruptions that happened with regards to the SVOD players as well that have entered, like and big platforms like Netflix, so on and so forth. So let's start briefly from the top. European films are losing audiences, and it's a big debate internationally how to win back the audience and what are the new tools to make people go to watch films in cinema as opposed to watching it sometimes on a tablet or on our home screens. Now, the case of Georgia has been even more dramatic because, of course, after the collapse of the Union, I think we were the second biggest movie-going culture within the Union when it existed, and then everything disappeared, the infrastructure. So there's been a lot of cinemas like a beautiful buildings in the country, but when I was working at the head of the Film Fund, I was quite ashamed because I had to say a couple of times in international panels that we had 6 screens in the country. And normally 6 screens you have in one cinema in one city, and you have like maybe 30 other cinemas in the same city. Yeah. So for me, it's been a big dilemma how to build up the local audience. What we did a study because you always need a research also to talk to the government. You need stats, you need evidence. So we did a research and we understood that luckily Georgian audiences liked Georgian films more than some other films. Even they could go with a preference to a Georgian film over an American blockbuster. And then what we started to do, it's not very successful, let me tell you openly, because it's a heavy work. But we started, what Film Fund is also going on right now is like different educational programs of bringing cinema on wheels. You know, when you take a wagon or some specific equipment and you go to the remote places, cities or villages, and you bring back the audience culture. I would have Giorgio Vashvili, some of you may know, the one who did The Other Bank and Hibula and the films that have been very, very successful internationally. George would go with his cast and some other filmmakers, and we would create this intimate moment between the audience and the filmmakers. And then we've been in very active, not me personally, all the time, because that needs local municipality support as well. But you know, you need to work with the local municipalities and to get an access to the buildings that are there for nothing, basically. Or sometimes you have boring, I don't know, bread baking things organized in the cinema or whatever crazy thing you may like, and get access to it and start to do programming. And for that, I have faced a lot of barriers from business sector, because for them it was not viable, you know, commercially, which meant that we had to do a bit of a state funding in that. And that's what art house cinema chain means. You know, you have to have partial support from the state, and then you have to have a local managers, local companies who want to go independent in 5 years' time, in 6 year times. And so this is state-private partnership, it's called. And Georgia is now doing better. Of course, there are over 10 or 15 cinemas now, and not only 3. I started in the year when there were 3, but it still is a problem. And it is an even bigger problem since there is movie and Netflix and all that, because, you know, it's much, much harder to get people going to cinema. That's essential. Without that, there's no way forward. You need to support debuts and the second films, because these are the most fragile to be supported. If you don't give a chance to these sorts of people, then you will never understand what are the new stories. So yes, The Other Bank, someone mentioned it here. I think there are some fans of Giorgio Vashvili on the chat. In Bloom, Machine That Made Everything Disappear, A Fold in My Blanket, A Scary Mother, The House of Others, just The Brides. I'm mentioning few from many, luckily, that the Georgian Film Fund supported as the first and the second feature. And that really shaped up what now is called the new wave of Georgian cinema. Because today I can say that new wave of Georgian cinema really exists. But this I say like 10 years later. I would not say it in 2011 and in 2012. There was a question about shorts I followed on the, and this is also linked to a little bit to this young talent. I wish I would tell you that, you know, of course we had a funding, and there is still a funding in Georgian Film Center for shorts. But the promotion tactics for shorts are quite different. For me, a short film is a business card of a filmmaker, because with the short film, you prove your talent, you make something interesting, breathtaking, and you are mapped immediately as a talent who needs nurturing. And if you come to my, I'm just saying hypothetically, competition for the first feature debut, and you have already done an interesting short, then you have much better chances, because we see your visual narrative language. But also me as Tamara, I'm working with different international platforms now, and not all of them would normally appreciate when I say it, probably. But what I would like to say, if you guys have a chance to do shorts on your own, you know, don't wait for budgets and, you know, the polished, and I think you can go very raw, very authentic on a short, and really in 5 minutes, in 15 minutes, capture your cinematic language. And I always say, yeah, just go and do it, you know, with your friends or with your colleagues. Just do it, because it can be also a great calling card for your next work. I observe that there's a lot of crossover, you know, and probably your colleague would agree that there are a lot of feature animations, and people are exploring a little bit like this combination narratives right now. Animation history was quite strong in Georgia, but because it's also more expensive, it had less chances somehow in post-90s, you know, post-civil war in Georgia, because the talent was out, you know, the mechanisms were outdated and the talent was emigrated a little bit as well. But there is one very strong girl who is doing a lot for animation in Georgia right now, and I just recently learned that she did an association of Georgian animators as well, and they are pushing very strongly. They are always present in ANSI, they are promoting animation projects, and I think that you need to do the same like you would do for the feature, but with a focus on animation. It cannot be the reason for a negative reply, but it's a lost opportunity. So with your image or without, it would be nice that Azerbaijan has a good festival. Yeah, but it's not why you won't become a member. Well, I have a very personal opinion on that, of course, but no, there is no step back, because after when I left, I had an excellent collaboration with the two directors after me, Nana Janelidze and Zurab Maliyyələşdirilməsi. This is a very, very rare case where you have a good cooperation, and everyone was having jokes about it internationally. But we were really, and I stayed with the Georgian Film Fund, if you ask about me, in a position of a consultant for 6 years after I was not the head. And that helped to work together, and they were very good leaders, and we did a lot of things together. I stepped fully out of that mandate last year, because there was a new director of the fund, and I thought that, you know, I was also time to go, and I had my own visions of things that would probably not always be of the same of the new management, but that's also, you know, part of life, that's fine. But I have some criticism, not towards the fund, but I think a bit more needs to be done now to go even higher a little bit with the Georgian content. But, you know, I've learned the lesson. I'm not in charge of it anymore. I can work with, I work a lot with the projects and the producers I like, and I do things still, but I have to also learn to put a limit to my enthusiasm, and I think I've learned it. So no, Georgia is doing all right in my view, but it could do better.
Fantastic. 4:30. I want to thank you so much for a discussion. Like, you can read the chat and they're like,
I'm very happy it made sense to people. That's fantastic.
You see, like, people are talking about how interesting it was and how informative it was. And once again, thank you so much. I mean, the pleasure and the honor was absolutely ours. And hopefully, I keep saying this, you know, pretty much every single time after this master class, but we are really looking into turning Interact into like a proper educational platform, something that you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, because I think, you know, we need to start with the ABC, and education is definitely a huge part of that. So, and hopefully when the borders open up, and since we are neighbors, I think it would be fantastic to welcome you personally in Azerbaijan.
Absolutely, it would be a pleasure. It's been a long overdue. I have not been to Baku for a while, and I am very open. I'm very sure that you are on the way, which is not going to be easy, but it's going to be interesting to do more in education and in promotion. And if there will be an angle to meet again with these people and do maybe in depth, go a little bit deeper into specific subjects, then I'm always there. So thank you for inviting me and good luck.
Представляют, например, на какой-то вечеринке человеку и там 15 лет работы с Пафнутием, с Мишей, общий язык, который является уже